guys? It's your boy Luke here for our prize picks targets for round 4 at the Masters tournament. We're coming off round 3, which was probably the weirdest card I've ever had on prize picks, where we ended up having 1 hit and 4 pushes, which, believe it or not, is a 1.5x payout. I never knew that. A lot of people in the Discord didn't know it either, so to see that come through, for us to profit for 2 of the first 3 days is pretty solid. We went 5 for 5 on day 1, 3 for 5 for round 2, and of course today, the 1 for 1, I suppose. So that makes it 9 of 11 on the week, hitting at a really respectable mark for the Masters, and looking to try and build on that here for round 4. First, a quick review of what we had for round 3. We ended up hitting the under on Sergio Garcia at 3.5 birdies or better, but that of course was just the only one we hit on. The rest of them were all pushes. We pushed Patrick Reed at 73 strokes, he shot 73, and we also had the over on 3 birdies and better on Matthew Fitzpatrick, Webb Simpson, and Terrell Hatton, and all of them ended up making exactly 3 birdies. So like I said, it's a weird one, but can't complain about going out there and making some money, and like I said, looking to build on that here for tomorrow. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop right on into it here for the final round. Alright, and on the screen you can see the stats for round 3, just to get an idea of how the course was playing, and it was playing difficult. You can see the scoring average was 2.58 shots over par, and a lot of that due to the weather. It was extremely cold, 45 to 55 degrees for most of the day. Also, we're dealing with 15 to 25 mile an hour wind gusts for most of the day as well. In terms, you had a very firm and fast golf course. Of course, the wind when you're in these parkland type of golf courses can be extremely hard to read, and you could see that with the scoring average. In fact, only 4 holes played under par, and only 1 of them on the back 9 was under par. So you can see it just got harder the further and further you got into the golf course, which a lot of that was due to weather, but also due to pin locations. This is Saturday, it's moving day at the Masters, a major championship, and they're going to make it an extremely confounding test. Now here for Sunday, the weather is a lot different, so I would expect it to play a little bit easier, even though we will have this Sunday traditional pin locations for the Masters, but the wind is pretty much non-existent, especially for the morning when we have 1 to 5 miles an hour the whole way up until right around noon, and then in the afternoon it's only 6 to 8 mile an hour sustained winds, which if you know anything about the PGA Tour, that's essentially nothing, especially when they're going to have so many trees around them. Usually it gets pretty hard to read the wind direction when you have all those trees around you, but if it's only going to be blowing in that 5 to 10 mile an hour range, it's going to give you plenty of protection from that wind. So it's going to be like playing in a dome tomorrow, and even though I don't expect it to be easy in terms of pin locations, I expect the scoring average to be much closer to 1 over par, or even just 1.5 strokes over par, even for a Sunday at the Masters. So in general, I am trying to take a stance towards most of the overs for the players, whether it comes to birdies or better, fairways or greens in regulation, or for strokes, trying to take the under. I just think a lot of the props are more reflective of the conditions that we saw on days 1 through 3, rather than what we're expecting here for the final round. So with that being said, what props am I looking at here for the final round? Alright, and now hopping into the props that I like. First off, a few strokes props that I'll be targeting are going to be Matthew Fitzpatrick under at 73 strokes, and also Billy Horschel at 73.5. So first off with Matthew Fitzpatrick, he's somebody who's extremely good at these major championships because he's so consistent. He's very accurate off the tee. He's going to gain right around half a stroke gain per round with his driver, and then in terms of his approach play, he's very good at hitting greens in regulation. And while he might not be the most aggressive player on the PGA Tour, he's certainly very capable of keeping bogeys off the scorecard, and tomorrow, with relatively gettable conditions, I would expect him to be able to grab a few birdies. So today, ended up making 3 birdies for us. All of them were on the front 9. On the back 9, kind of ended up falling apart. I mean, we saw that with the scoring average. You can see in the back 9, it was much tougher than on the front 9. But tomorrow for strokes, especially for some of these guys teeing off in the first half of the day, you can see Fitzpatrick teeing off right around noon. He should at least have gettable enough conditions to go out there and put up some scoring. Even more so with Billy Horschel down here at 73.5. Not only is he teeing off earlier in the day, he's at 10:20 a.m. for his tee time. He's also gets the hook, right? He has the 73.5, not just 73 strokes. So if he ends up shooting 1 over par, that would end up being enough for us. But given the conditions where we could see a scoring average close to 1 over par, Billy Horschel is a much better than average player in this field, especially if we consider the recent form where he's been on absolute fire, gaining across all 4 major statistical categories. It's an absolute steal. I have him projected right now right around 72.2 strokes, which is slightly over par, but if he shoots 1 over par, we're still going to hit that prop. Let alone if he goes out there, has a solid day, has the ball striking in order, especially with the approach play, he could shoot 2 or 3 strokes under par. So definitely like Billy Horschel at 73.5. Similar story with Matthew Fitzpatrick, who I have rejected for 71.9 strokes. So just slightly under par for Matthew Fitzpatrick. Of course, you don't get the win at 73. That's the real difference between Fitzpatrick and Herschel. So even though Fitzpatrick is projected for a lower score, he has a little bit of a lower success rate than somebody like Herschel, who we are able to take advantage of that hook on. Next up, the next guy I'm playing that I'll be supporting here for the fourth round is going to be Tiger Woods at 9.5 greens, which is definitely a little bit disrespectful for the GOAT. I mean, you're looking at right around a 70% green regulation rate for most of the field at this event. Yesterday it was a little bit lower. It was closer to 60%. So obviously with Sunday pin locations, might be a little bit closer to the 60% than the 70%. All Tiger has to do is hit just over 55% of his greens regulation to hit here, right? He can miss 8 greens and still end up hitting the over for us. And if there's one thing that Tiger Woods is known for, the one shots gained category where he really separates himself from the field is with the approach play. In fact, if you just take a look at his last 50 measured rounds, which of course are just over a few years span at this point, he's gaining close to 3/4 of a stroke per round, which is among the guys like a John Rahm, Justin Thomas, Victor Hovland when it comes to that iron play. And they have projections close to 12.5 greens regulation, not close to the 9.5. So clearly there's a lot of bias there because he's injured, because the leg is holding him back a bit. I mean, he shot 77 today, so it wasn't all that good. But at the same time, this is the GOAT, somebody who, when he's in that Sunday red, I have a hard time fading him. And like I said, he can miss 8 greens and still hit the over for us. So considering conditions are going to be much softer, much better for these players here on Sunday than they have been for the first 3 days, definitely a prop that I'm looking to target, even in some of my higher dollar cards as well. And now finally going over to our fades. The first fade I want to touch on is Jason Kokrak. I'm taking the over at 72.5 strokes. And I took him for my 4-round contest in DFS. I liked the skill set fit at some of the other comp courses, but the unfortunate part about Kokrak is he deals with issues around the green. When you have him at these major championships, when conditions get tough, or when you have tough pin locations in general, you'll see him struggle, and that was certainly the case today. He went out there, shot well over par, was in contention to start the day, but towards the end, kind of felt himself towards, top 10, top 20 territory. I believe right now he's tied for 9th place, which isn't all that bad when you consider from a fantasy perspective. But when we're trying to target props here, I'm taking the over because I expect him to get into trouble. Like I said, with those pin locations, you're going to miss at least a few greens. And with how dreadful his around the green play can be, that's going to lead to at least 2 to 3 bogeys. So I'm just counting on him shooting over par. I have him projected right now for right around a 73.1 score, which isn't all that much higher than the 72.5 number there. But as per usual with these cards here, you're going to have to fade players to try and get that 12.5x parlay. Of course, if I were to change this to an under on Jason Kokrak, you can see the payout switches from 12.5x down to 10x, which isn't what I'm looking for. I'm trying to maximize our payouts here. And if I'm going to have them projected for over that 72.5 number, it's certainly something that I'm willing to go to there. And I guess there's something to note about the board, as I have most of these guys projected for the under. I mean, pretty much everyone on the board. A few other notable exceptions I considered taking the over on. First off was Patrick Reed at 73, but I only have him projected for 73.2 strokes, so it's just hardly over the 72 mark there. So that's why I'm willing to go to Kokrak, because we do get a win at 73 rather than a push like what we would have for the Patrick Reed. And that's about it. Everyone else on the board I have projected for less than their projection. So the reason why we're taking Fitzpatrick and Herschel is because they have some of the larger discrepancies between their projection and what they actually are at on the board. But that's why I'm taking the over on Kokrak. Around the green play, not there. I'm expecting him to get into a little bit of trouble with these Sunday pin locations and potentially to have a little bit of pressure on his shoulders, because he is in the top 10 as of right now. Even with the rough round today where he shot well over par, kind of played himself into contention just based on how hard the golf course was for everyone else. And now lastly, the last fade is going to be the guy in first place, playing some beautiful golf at this point. But when you're in first place at the Masters, when you're in contention, that is just another level of pressure. I mean, Scotty Scheffler, I know he's a relatively calm guy. It looks like he's very slick. He's not thinking too much out there on the golf course. He's going to be thinking about it tomorrow. It's completely unavoidable when it comes to a major championship, let alone the Masters. And usually the first thing to go when a player gets nervous is the driving accuracy. They start to spread it a little bit. They start to overcompensate for some of their misses. And for Scottie Scheffler, that's going to mean a lot of misses to the right. He's likely to go out there tomorrow, overcook a few of those fades, sometimes even slices that you'll see from Scottie Scheffler from time to time. And all he has to do is miss 4 fairways. Obviously, there's a few fairways that are harder to hit than others, so it's going to come down to a few key holes. The projected average for the field right now is right around 9.8 fairways, so it is projected for a little bit lower than what I have him there. He is a below average accuracy player on tour. So in terms of my personal projections, I have him projected for 9.4 fairways, which again, it isn't a huge discrepancy from where they have him on the board there. Much like a Jason Kokrak though, we're trying to fade players to get that 12.5x parlay. Just like Jason Kokrak, if I change this, you can see it changes from a 12.5x down to a 10x parlay. So just trying to maximize the earnings that we can get here. And because he is a relatively inaccurate driver, because he is in contention, should be feeling some of that pressure here on Sunday. I do expect him to at least miss 4 fairways here in the final round. That's all I've got for the round 4 prize picks targets. I appreciate you guys coming by and enjoying the content. Before you hop on out of here though, go ahead and let me know down in the comments what your favorite prop on the board is. Whether it was something that I mentioned or completely off my radar, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are down below. And of course, make sure you like the video before you get out of here, and also make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already as well. That way you don't miss any of the golf content I have coming out in the future, whether it's for prize picks, DFS, course breakdowns. I'll have you guys completely covered. Best of luck with any of your props here for round 4. Best of luck for any DFS contests that you have. Really looking forward to this final round to see who's going to be the 2022 Masters champion. Again, I appreciate all the support, guys. Best of luck, and I'll see you guys next week.